Hi, my name is Leo Barber, and you are listening to the Vitals and Virtues podcast, where we focus on the pursuit of a virtuous life from the perspective of a nurse, me. Join me as I take in classical wisdom from saints, philosophers, and sacred scripture, distill it for practical application that you can take with you on your way into your shift. Be sure to keep an eye out for special editions where I get to interview healthcare professionals from various specialties to help us learn and grow to be the best people and providers we can be. Welcome back, everybody, to Vitals and Virtues. I am your host, Leo Barber, still, and today we're going to cover section 3, chapter 3, I guess, of Introduction to the Devout Life. It has been a little bit since I've recorded on this particular topic. Put out an interview and a Why I'm Catholic piece. If you guys enjoyed that, let me know somewhere. I always enjoy talking about Catholicism and my faith. So, if you guys want to hear more of that, just let me know somewhere in a comment. Maybe a little update here. Lately, I've been doing the Exodus St. Michael's Lent, which goes from the Feast of the Assumption to the Feast of the Holy Guardian Angels, or the Feast of St. Michael the Archangel. So I've been doing that, and I really enjoy it. There's something that's specifically kind of cool about it, is on Friday morning / Thursday night at 2 a.m., we do a vigil, which I think is really cool, and I think it's just nice to wake up in the quiet of the night and spend time praying, undistracted, except by our own mind, which admittedly that can be a lot, but anywho, that's something that's been going on lately that I think has been fun. And then I've also been slowly plugging away at the bioethics course at the Institute of Catholic Culture, which has been pretty fun. As I say fun, there's never a time in my young life when I would have been like, yeah, that sounds like fun to voluntarily take classes. But it's been really edifying, might be the word. Very educational and helps build a better foundation when it comes to certain bioethical issues. So if you are interested, be sure to check that out, the Institute of Catholic Culture. The link is in the description. And so, all right, back to it. The Introduction to the Devout Life, which is we're going to be doing today mainly, is which virtues continued. Something from the last episode or the last chapter on which virtues, something that I think was very helpful, because I can be very distracted and oh yeah, let me develop this virtue or that virtue. It can be helpful to just look at the virtues that are most appropriate for your station in life. This one is something that I need to develop better, I think, is temperance or meekness. Strength under control, as well as temperance, and prudence, and kind of those the three there would probably go a long ways. But especially as a husband and father, meekness, as husbands and fathers, our family looks to us for support and safety. And if I am losing my cool and screaming at everybody because nobody wants to listen, it's not, one, I always have regret and remorse afterwards and have to apologize, which by the grace of God, I can usually recognize that I do need to apologize. But that's not how I cultivate a peaceful home or a stable home, by falling into these passions or vices of wrath or some other such vice that would cause me problems. So for me specifically, it's looking at the virtues that are, one, I struggle with the most, or the vices I struggle with the most, and then enacting those virtues that are contrary to those vices, or practicing rather the virtues that are contrary to the vices that I have, and especially those that pertain to my particular calling in life. And then, so that's like maybe a little recap of something that I took away from the last chapter. And then the where I'm at now is, oh, wait a second. I think I've been telling you wrong. This is chapter 2 of section 3, which is the same subject continued, which vices to practice. And so with that, it's a long one, so let me get to it. The same subject continued. St. Augustine says very admirably that beginners in devotion are wont to commit certain faults which, while they are blamable according to the strict laws of perfection, are yet praiseworthy by reason of the promise they hold forth of a future excellent goodness, to which they actually tend. For instance, that common shrinking fear which gives rise to an excessive scrupulosity in the souls of some who are but just set free from a course of sin, is commendable at that early stage, and is the almost certain forerunner of future purity of conscience. But this same fear would be blamable in those who are farther advanced, because love should reign in their hearts, and love is sure to drive away all such servile fear by degrees. In his early days, St. Bernard was very severe and harsh towards those whom he directed, telling them to begin with that they must put aside the body and come to him with their minds only. In confession, he treated all faults, however small, with extreme severity, and his poor apprentices in the study of perfection were so urged onwards that by dint of pressing he kept them back, for they lost heart and breath when they found themselves thus driven up to steep and high an ascent. Therein, my daughter, you can see that although it was his ardent zeal for the most perfect purity which led that great saint to an act, and although such zeal is a great virtue, still it was a virtue which required checking. And so God himself checked it in a vision, by which he filled St. Bernard with so gentle, tender, and loving a spirit, that he was altogether changed, blaming himself heavily for having been so strict and so severe, and becoming so kindly and indulgent, that he made himself all things to all men in order to win all. St. Jerome tells us that his beloved daughter, St. Paula, was not only extreme, but obstinate in practicing bodily mortifications, and refusing to yield to the advice given her upon that head by her bishop, St. Epiphanius. And furthermore, she gave way so excessively to her grief at the death of those she loved as to peril her own life. Whereupon St. Jerome says, "It will be said that I am accusing this saintly woman rather than praising her, but I affirm before Jesus, whom she served, and whom I seek to serve, that I am not saying what is untrue on one side or the other, but simply describing her as one Christian another. That is to say, I am writing her history, not her panegyric, and her faults are the virtues of others." He means to say that the defects and faults of St. Paula would have been looked upon as virtues in a less perfect soul. And indeed, there are actions which we must count as imperfections in the perfect, which yet would be highly esteemed in the imperfect. When at the end of a sickness, the invalid's legs swell, it's a good sign, indicating that natural strength is returning, throwing off foul humors. But it would be a bad sign in one not avowedly sick, as showing that nature was too feeble to disperse or absorb those humors. So, my child, we must think well of those whom we see practicing virtues, although imperfectly, since the saints have done the like. But as to ourselves, we must give heed to practice them, not only diligently, but discreetly, and to this end we shall do well, strictly to follow the wise man's counsel, and not trust in our own wisdom, but lean on those whom God has given as our guides. And here I must say a few words concerning certain things which some reckon as virtues, although they are nothing of the sort. I mean ecstasies, trances, rhapsodies, extraordinary transformations, and the like, which are dwelt on in some books, and which promise to raise the soul to a purely intellectual contemplation. an altogether supernatural mental attitude, and a life of preeminent excellence. But I would have you see, my child, that these perfections are not virtues. They are rather rewards which God gives to virtues, or perhaps more correctly speaking, tokens of the joys of everlasting life, occasionally granted to men in order to kindle in them a desire for the fullness of joy which is only found in paradise. But we must not aspire to such graces, which are in no ways necessary to us in order to love and serve God, our only lawful ambition. Indeed, for the most part, these graces are not to be acquired by labor or industry, and that because they are rather passions than actions which we may receive, but cannot create. Moreover, our business only is to become good, devout people, pious men and women, and all our efforts must be to that end. If it should please God further to endow us with angelic perfection, we should then be prepared to become good angels. But meanwhile, let us practice in all simplicity, humility, and devotion those lowly virtues to the attainment of which our Lord has bidden us labor. I mean, patience, cheerfulness, self-mortification, humility, obedience, poverty, chastity, kindness to our neighbor, forbearance towards his failing diligence, and a holy fervor. Let us willingly resign the higher eminences to lofty souls. We are not worthy to take so high a rank in God's service. Let us be content to be as scullions, porters, insignificant attendants in his household, leaving it to him if he should hereafter see fit to call us to his own council chamber. Of a truth, my child, the King of glory does not reward his servants according to the dignity of their office, but according to the humility and love with which they have exercised it. While Saul was seeking his father's asses, he found the kingdom of Israel. Rebekah, watering Abraham's camels, became his son's wife. Ruth, gleaning after Boaz's reapers, and lying down at his feet, was raised up to become his bride. Those who pretend to such great and extraordinary graces are very liable to delusions and mistakes, so that sometimes it turns out that people who aspire to be angels are not ordinarily good men, and their goodness lies more in high-flown words than in heart and deed. But we must beware of despising or presumptuously condemning anything. Only, while thanking God for the preeminence of others, let us abide contentedly in our own lower but safer path, a path of less distinction but more suitable to our lowliness, resting satisfied that if we walk steadily and faithfully therein, God will lift us up to greater things. Whew, that was a long read. But we did it. Man, this actually was super duper good. I like that here towards the end, he listed, a whole host of different virtues that we should be kind of aspiring to, specifically humility. And, that's something like I can be an arrogant butthead. So that's something that I always can work on. But also, I don't know if you guys are listening to similar things that I listen to, but, there are certain stories of saints and these holy men and women who do have these St. Padre Pio smelled like roses or like flowers, apparently could levitate, had the stigmata. St. Francis de Sales had the stigmata, and a lot of saints, they have these very marvelous gifts that God gives them. The stigmata is a painful thing, and the wounds of Christ, and you're feeling that it's different. But in my head, I always look at saints as lives worthy of emulation or aspiring to, and I can get my head wrapped around the wrong pieces of becoming a saint. Oh, if I could read souls, that would be so cool, or some dumb thought like that, versus I just want to love Jesus more. And if we keep that simple thing, just love Jesus more and do what he wants me to do, I think if that is truly what your heart is desiring, and you pick certain virtues that are appropriate to your station in life, you'll likely come across good things just by accidents of the pursuit of virtue. So that was, I just love St. Francis de Sales' works so much. They're so good. And then he talks about essentially, how sick people's legs start to swell, and that's a sign that they're getting strength back. Like what he's referring to specifically, healthcare providers out here will probably be able to recognize this, but an invalid, somebody who hasn't really been getting up and getting about, their muscles will atrophy, so they will lose muscle mass. And then once they are able to, take more fluids and foods and be slightly more active, they gain muscle mass back. And over time, that muscle mass grows and, their legs swell, as he says. And then the flip side of that is people who are very sick, sometimes they have like fluid volume overload, and they start to have edema or swelling of the legs. So I just like St. Francis de Sales is such a well-rounded guy. I mean, he apparently was knew how to fence and box, as well as knows all of these wonderful spiritual things. I just dig it. But that's it for this one. We'll catch you on the next time, and until then, pick out your virtues and pursue them heroically. St. Francis de Sales, pray for us.